Hey, so this is going to be a little bit different type of video that I'm making here today. Um, Probably a little bit of a weird topic, I know, as the title suggests. But anyways, before I get too into it, as you can tell, I'm in a little bit of a state of transition here by half of my stuff being stripped off the wall and stuff. I'm going to be moving to either Phoenix, Arizona, or Kansas City within the coming week. And I still don't know with 100% certainty which one I'm moving to yet. Because I have an offer nailed down in Kansas City, but the offer in Phoenix hasn't been completely nailed down, and that's probably my first option. So, anyways, one way or the other, I'm going to be leaving Columbus in about a week or so. Yeah, but life, it's crazy and unpredictable. My Omaha, Nebraska offer fell apart a few weeks ago, so that's why that's not currently my thing anymore. But anyways, yeah, so enough of that though, back now to the title of the video. um, I know this is a weird and awkward topic, but it's one that's definitely out there these days because Quiet on the Set, the documentary, was made recently, and I saw it on Amazon. I think it was Paramount Plus. How I watched it, I moved off someone else's Paramount Plus subscription, so that's how I saw it. And this has also been a topic of a lot of speculation on the internet for a long while. A lot of us under 40 have an interest in Dan Schneider because we watched his shows growing up. I watched Drake and Josh. My brother watched iCarly. I watched a little bit of Victorious with Victoria Justice. And he was involved a little in the Amanda Bynes show as well. No, I take it back. He actually was the main one involved with the Amanda Bynes show. That was misspoke there. Dan Schneider. But I loved that show too when I was a kid. So it's interesting when we hear these allegations being made against a guy who was associated with all of our childhoods. And the Quiet on the Set, on the whole, was not terrible. But to be honest with you, I got really mad watching that documentary, and probably for different reasons than other people got mad. Now, don't get me wrong, I think Nickelodeon, for what it does sound like, was a little bit exploitative of its underage stars. Okay, and that I think happens a lot in Hollywood, both with underage and of age actors. I think especially when they're in positions where they're young and they don't have a lot of power and they get exploited by directors and exploited by producers. So I don't think it's exclusive to Nickelodeon. But Quiet on the Set, honestly, it grabbed me as just one big, complain fest about how anyone who didn't like Dan Schneider and anybody who really didn't come out ahead from the Nickelodeon TV shows made in the 90s and early 2000s about why they were the victims and everybody there was evil, especially Dan Schneider. For instance, one girl named Katrina, and I forget her last name, she had been one of the leading candidates to have her own show like Amanda Bynes did. Of course, the Amanda Show, made in the 90s. And people talked about how, she was really upset, and she was coming back and talking about how Dan Schneider had been the one that went with Amanda Bynes instead of her. And we're supposed to automatically hate Dan Schneider for this. Amanda Bynes was actually pretty good in her role. And, the reason we are also supposed to feel bad for her is one reason listed is because she was a little bit chunky to be in the role. Well, I don't know exactly, what to say on that, but, the way actors look is a part of how people are cast into different roles. And to be honest with you, I don't know for certain, what to make of it, but I can say this, that's not a crime what he did. That's not unusual in Hollywood. Very often, how an actor or actress looks will determine, what roles they do and don't get. And whether that's right or wrong depends more on people who spend their lives in that industry than me, but it's not unique to Dan Schneider. And I don't believe that Dan Schneider deserves to be called necessarily a uniquely bad person for not giving her her own TV show, or a sexual predator, as we're going to get to later on, as that's some other accusations made against him. But right now, just sticking to some of the other things about the Quiet on the Set TV show, we got to listen to a lot of people go on there and talk about how their careers did not go as well as they wanted on the Dan Schneider show, about a show. Like, if they had a brief appearance, and they didn't become a superstar, why, it's all Dan Schneider's fault. Well, to be honest, they sound like just a bunch of sour grapes to me. Now, don't get me wrong. I don't know if Dan Schneider was not a good boss. In fact, the more I listen about it, it does sound like he was a little bit of a jerk, and he tended to be a bit of a dictator on running the sets, and he tended to be maybe not the most pleasant person in the world. But to be honest, that's usually a trait sometimes of people who make effective TV shows, effective movies, effective companies, effective everything. Sometimes the best leaders aren't always the nicest people in the world. And there are a lot of the top people, who actually came out of Nickelodeon and were immensely successful, such as Ariana Grande, Miranda Cosgrove, Drake Bell, Josh Peck, Amanda Bynes, Keenan. I forget his last name. I just know him from Keenan and Kel, and I know he's on SNL, but I always forget it. Thompson, maybe is that his last name? Keenan Thompson. None of them are out calling Dan Schneider a bad person or a predator or anything like that. In fact, actually, none of the people that worked with on the set, even on Quiet on the set, made the allegations about him being a sexual predator. That is an allegation that has been solely relegated to the internet, and maybe I think they had one person on there that did make some allegations similar to that. But for the most part, nobody, other than these people who have this wanting to make Dan Schneider the new face of the Me Too movement, its new target, And don't get me wrong, on a lot of the Me Too movement people, this is bringing me now, I guess, around to the second part of this video, which is a little bit more serious and a little bit more awkward. I do in general support the Me Too movement, but what bothers me is seeing these serious allegations made against a person like Dan Schneider, where there's very, very, very little evidence involved. Okay, now don't get me wrong. With a lot of those people in the Me Too movement, I mean, they're monsters. You have the likes of Harvey Weinstein and Bill Cosby who were convicted in courts of laws. There's many testimonies and much evidence to believe that they committed the crimes they did. And the only thing I'm concerned with, as far as I'm concerned, is that those guys deserve to be in jail for the rest of their lives, and or worse. And in the case of Jeffrey Epstein, I mean, goodness sakes, that guy, there's no words to describe, the things he did. And I think there should be much harsher punishments for people like that, or even the more moderate ones, like Louis C.K., who didn't really do violent crimes, but was wildly abused his power to take advantage of female co-stars. However, I don't see any evidence to suggest that Dan Schneider has done any of this in any of the videos I've watched, including the documentary Quiet on the Set. In fact, the one evidence of gross, sexual misconduct that happened on his show, one of the Nickelodeon shows that he worked on, was on Drake Bell. And I'm not going to go into super detail on this, because if you want to watch the interviews on Quiet on the Set. It's very graphic, and unless you're really just in the mood for something like that, I would not recommend watching it, because it was hard to listen to Drake Bell's testimony of what Brian Peck did to him. FYI, not to be confused with Josh Peck, who was his co-star. I know it's ironic they have the same names, but Brian Peck, Josh Peck, no relation. Brian Peck was a adult gay man who molested and committed sexual assault and just other horrific things to Drake Bell when he was working on the set at Nickelodeon, when he was young and vulnerable. He did things like, I won't go into detail. It's pretty bad. But we'll just say he did some unfathomably awful things. And Drake Bell testifies that Dan Schneider was one of the few people that defended him on this and actually took his case up, and when he had to go to court was one of the few people that stood by him. And again, if you think I'm being too lenient on predators, feel free to tell me, but this is where I see that I'm actually attacking a predator like Brian Peck and giving somebody who seems to be overall on the right side on this, like, Dan Schneider, some credit. Now, again, Dan Schneider probably he may not have done enough to help prevent things like that, but he never hired Brian Peck. He never knew about what was going on. And he, like I said, he was one of the few that personally comforted Drake Bell and took his side up when they found out these things were going on, where a lot of people didn't. A lot of actors took up the side of Brian Peck since he was their buddy. And unfortunately, that's what often happens in these situations. As I was watching the documentary on Jeffrey Epstein, a lot of these rich and powerful people that he had circles with, friends with, just because of the fact that Jeffrey Epstein was their friend, they didn't believe any of the allegations made against him, and they defended him in court and many other things, which is how he got away with it for so long. And probably the same with Brian Peck, and probably the same with a lot of these predators, But, okay, now kind of circling back, to Dan Schneider, there is one point I want to also make on the Quiet on the Set documentary. Drake Bell has his own allegations pending against him, and not that that in any way undermines the things that happened to him, but it's worth noting that the main testimony of these kind of allegations, these kind of things happening on Nickelodeon to, you know, a child star are happening, were made by a person who himself is under a lot of investigations. You know, and I've seen some of the court hearing between Drake Bell and his accused, you know, 12-year-old victim, and he has pled guilty to at least some of the charges. You know, now Drake, not all of them, and I don't know for certain the details on that, so I'm not going to get into great depth and detail on what was, you know, what accusations were brought against Drake Bell. But my point just is, you know, I take allegations like that very seriously, you know, and just like, because I mean, I do believe Drake Bell committed some of the acts that were accused of him, but I don't believe anything whatsoever about the allegations made against Dan Schneider of being a predator or a pervert. I mean, I remember on one of the stupid gossip videos I watched, the #1 comment on it, which shows the overall stupidity of most internet comments, was Dan Schneider worse than Bill Cosby. You know, go to hell. That's what I just have to say about that. Just go to hell, saying that without any kind of evidence. And for the people that make those videos, you know, just go straight to hell. You know, look, if there was evidence to suggest any of that was true, I absolutely would agree. You know, but the thing is, there isn't, and it took a long time for us to even get the evidence on people like Harvey Weinstein, Bill Cosby, and Jeffrey Epstein. There's little to none on Dan Schneider, and the only evidence I ever saw was in one video they had where Dan Schneider was going around and he was like filming some of the girls on set, and he wasn't like, you know, when I say filming, I don't mean like he was, I know it sounds a little weird and dirty, but he was just going around being a goofball, filming everybody on set, you know. He was like, hey, how you doing? Hey, what's that you got up your nose? Hey, what's that? He's just being weird. And a couple of the girls gave him like this weird look when he came by, like, oh, hey, you know, and just being like, more like they were just seeing like, oh, here's the weird uncle going around and doing his fart joke to whatever to people. There was nothing that off-putting about it. I mean, and I remember the comments were just filled with all these people saying, oh, I know what this look means. This is a look of a sign that somebody is really uncomfortable. They wouldn't be acting this way unless they thought he was, you know, a sexual predator and somebody they needed to be wary of. What the, I mean, I don't know what to say to that other than what the hell. That's not even remotely enough evidence to base something that serious off of. And part of the reason that it shows that I'm right on this is Dan Schneider has never been taken to court over this. He's never pled guilty to any charges. I don't know that there are any charges pending against him along these lines. And none of the top stars, like I mentioned, have ever made accusations against him regarding either him being a bad boss to work under or under him especially along the lines of him being a predator. The only place where I have seen this, you know, the allegations made very, very widely and very, very loudly are a bunch of random YouTube channels that specialize in celebrity gossip and specialize in, you know, just putting out videos that are clickbait that then they sell their merch on. And you can say a lot of things about my crappy YouTube channel, but one thing you can say, you can tell by my views and subscribers, I ain't making a lot of money off this, and this definitely isn't just for clicks. Okay, so I know it's very weird to defend a guy like Dan Schneider, but if you want to know why I'm making this video and why I'm defending, it's because I see in the modern era with social media becoming the new governing force about how we determine whether people are innocent or guilty, I see the widespread growth of misinformation, which is the dark side of living in the information age, and I see also, you know, too many people believing all this misinformation, you know, and the other thing is too, I am legitimately shocked and disgusted sometimes at the things that people like Jeffrey Epstein, Jared Fogle, Bill Cosby, the likes of them. I am truly, from the bottom of my heart, disgusted as a human being can be with these kind of people. And I think if Dan Schneider were ever convicted of these crimes, he belongs in the same camp with them, and I think they should never see the light of day. They should be in jail forever, and the fact that they don't spend their entire lives in jail is a crime. But I'm also very careful as to who I'm going to point the finger at that and who I'm going to call something like that, because these are, you know, it's the same if not worse almost in the modern world as calling somebody a murderer, you know. So that's why I'm making this video. It's not just because I love Dan Schneider. It's not because I just loved his TV shows growing up. It's not because I, or by any means that I want to defend sexual predators. It's that I want to be, just stress to everybody, be very careful about what you believe on the internet, even my videos. Be careful to verify everything you watch in them, and be very careful about, when you're dealing with extremely serious topics like, sexual assault. Be very careful who you convict and, condemn of these kind of things, because we shouldn't be giving any breaks at all to the people that actually do commit them, and we should be very careful about how and who we convict of these kind of things. So I know it's a weird topic, a little morbid, a little weird. I tried to keep it a little bit lighthearted, but I don't know. It's like you said, I mean, it's kind of hard to keep something like this super lighthearted. All you have to do is go on the internet and you'll find all these, videos talking about what a horrible person Dan Schneider is. But if you disagree, well, feel free to tell me in the comment section below. And other than that, just thanks for watching and see you next time. Bye.